Hello, everybody. I'm John Felt. This is the NCGA Valent Ag Weather Outlook for March 18th, 2017. Well, I'm always looking at anomalies, whether it's been too wet or too dry or too hot or too cold. But this time of year, it's especially important because what we get right now is going to last into the early part of the planting season, whether the fields are too wet to get into or either we're going to have adequate precipitation and soil moisture that's going to help us right through the growing season, or we're going to be dealing with dry conditions. So I really focus on that, not just in my weekly video briefing to you, but also in my weekly posts. It looks like many areas, at least in the near past, have been more dry than wet, and another trend is more warm than cold. But again, we're in late winter, early spring period, and we can get a lot of variability. So for the last 7 days, here's precipitation. We had a quiet week over most of the Midwest. Some precipitation here and there, but generally less than a half an inch. An exception was this band right here. And when I'm thinking March, early to mid-March, and sort of this northwest to southeast flow, that could very well be snow, and it was. So this came in the form primarily of snow. If we look at the last 30 days, this gives us some idea of areas that have been unusually wet or unusually dry. Parts of Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Missouri, and even parts of the eastern Corn Belt, not as much, not as strong a signal, but this area has been quite dry. 1 to 3 inches below normal precipitation over the last 30 days. We have some areas that have been wet right in here, but those are more isolated. But overall, I think we have probably a little bit more dry than unusually wet. The number of rain days in the last 30 days also shows this. Areas in brown indicate areas that have been fewer rain days. And matter of fact, if you look at that area of dark brown, that's saying 0. So no measurable rain in the last 30 days. Now you can see it's the core sort of right in here, up from Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas into parts of Nebraska. You don't see it quite as clear in this region, but even in these areas that have had a bit more rain days, the rain has been light, and that's why it's been somewhat dry. So here's your snow over the last week. We did have a few pockets up there around 8 inches, or maybe even a little bit more than 8 inches, but most of it was in the 2 to 4 inch range. Snow we get in March over almost the entire area tends to melt fairly quickly. If we get a really cold air mass, it might sit on the ground for a while. This is where the snow is on the ground, so you can see a lot of this is already melted, but we still have this core of snow. And, if you look back, you probably have heard me talk about that all winter long. It's been sitting there in North Dakota. You've heard about the snow over the northeast U.S., mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. So if we focus in that snow over North Dakota, one thing is it's a high potential for a lot of runoff, but on the other hand, it's pretty localized. The area of purple there is indicating about 4 inches of water equivalent. And as far as the spring flood outlook goes, sort of concentrated in here. Now, I know we have a lot of concern along the Mississippi River ag region. And right now, it looks like a lower risk of flooding this season compared to what would normally occur. Now, we can get some minor flooding. That's pretty typical. But the bigger flooding, the more moderate or major flood stages, looks to me like a lesser probability than would occur over a normal year. As far as temperatures go, you can see we had a west-east pattern, west being above normal, east being below normal. So we did cool off over the last week. Soil moisture here, again, I just wanted to show you we have some pockets of wet soils due to that snow and past snow. Parts of Iowa, parts of Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin, maybe northern Illinois. And then we have areas of drier conditions over parts of eastern Kansas, northern Missouri, and some parts of Illinois. Okay, now let's get into the forecast. Well, this week, we're really going to be dominated by this ridge of high pressure, and you have to sort of focus on this axis right here. That's where temperatures are going to be well above normal. Over the eastern Corn Belt, we're going to be a little bit more influenced by this dip. So when you see a dip in the jet stream, you tend to get on the other side of that trough, bulging northward of the area of jet stream or high pressure here, and then another dip. So we have a dip, a bulge, and a dip, and the temperatures really align with that. We have really mild or unusually warm temperatures over the western U.S. and retreating cold air over the east. So generally we're going to be trending from starting off below normal and gradually going up above normal, but that trend's going to be much stronger over the western Corn Belt. East is still going to be lagging in this average of 5 days. As far as precipitation this week goes, it looks like somewhat similar to last week. If we do get some precipitation, for the most part, it's going to be very modest, generally a ½ inch or less. There's a possibility down into this region here, not really a key ag growing region, but right in this area here, the Missouri Ozarks, parts of southeast could use that rain, but southwest Missouri, not quite as much. This area could use a bit more rain, but overall a pretty quiet week, nothing as far as real heavy rainfall. We get into the 6 to 10 day range. We're getting into the latter part of March now. And what are the differences? Well, the differences here are that we have a dip in the jet stream in this region. We don't have quite as pronounced ridging or bulging of the jet stream, but look, it's pushed off to the east. So as we get into the 6 to 10 day range, it looks like above normal temperatures over the middle part of the nation, over the Corn Belt. Again, I think over the central part of the nation, the most significant above normal temperatures. Let's look out a little bit further. Now we're getting into early April. What has changed? Not a whole lot. I don't see quite as pronounced ridging aloft, but we still have over most of the Midwest ridging aloft. So as we go into the 11 to 15 day range, generally above normal temperatures, not quite as much as the 6 to 10 day range, but still above normal temperatures. So to wrap up the temperature summary, we're going to start out this briefing period with some cooler air. That's going to be replaced with milder air, and especially over the western part of the Corn Belt. But by the end of the month, it looks like generally, I think we're looking at a mild pattern with occasional, these are averages. We'll occasionally have some dips in the temperature. Don't expect this to be entirely mild. But right now, the models are not indicating any prolonged or deep cold. Now, precipitation's a little bit trickier. Here's this week. I think I've discussed that already. Here's week 2. Now, we'll see how this works out. This would be a somewhat favorable type of precipitation pattern over eastern Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana to get some additional precipitation. We'll see how that works out, but right now that would be positive. Then we look at the longer range, weeks 3 and 4. Mild temperatures continue, and that's how I started my briefing. More warm than cold. Precipitation, right now, is showing pretty above normal precipitation over a large area. I think we still have a little bit of time here. We can get some recharge over these dry areas, so this would be generally positive, but we don't want to get too much this close to the start of the planting season. Okay, so here your takeaway. Generally, it looks like another quiet week over most areas, below normal precipitation. Week 1, variable temperatures, but overall a warming trend. Hope you have a great week. Take a look at the dashboard if you haven't seen that. And I have some new products coming out in a couple weeks as well. I'll be talking to you about very shortly, called the Ag Weather Planner. But right now, take a look at the dashboard. I keep that up all day long. NCGA, password NCGA. You can get to it by agweatheradvisor.com. Have a great week.